Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Chloe. Today we've made this documentary about the race for space for National History Day 2013.
To start off things, we asked a few pedestrians some questions about the space race.
Here's what they answered. Who was the first man in space, Miss Maza?
I think it was some Russian guy, Yuri
Gagarin. Good job. Who was the man to say that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind?
Neil Armstrong.
You're correct. Who launched Sputnik 1 into space?
That would be the Soviet Union.
You're right.
When did the space race first start?
The 1950s?
Yes, around 1957. Hi, I'm Sarah Moore, and this is our thesis statement. The space race was a turning point in the Cold War. It gave the two rivalries, the Americans and the Soviets, a reason to work together instead of against each other to help the entire world. Thank you. August 9, 1925, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Nagasaki, ending World War II. During 1945, most of China becomes communists. October 4th, 1957, the Soviets launched the first satellite into space, Sputnik 1. The satellites reached space aboard a Soviet intercontinental missile that was designed to carry nuclear warheads, so no doubt America was alarmed.
The Mercury project was America's first manned space program. The capsules were small and the flights were short, but the historical importance of this program can't be denied. President John F. Kennedy gives his famous speech regarding space exploration.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first man to step foot on the moon, beating the Soviets in the race. By present day, 24 men have traveled 250,000 miles from Earth to the moon. 3 have made the trip twice, and 12 of them have walked on the moon. Thousands of photographs, hours of video, and about 841 pounds of moon rock were returned to Earth by the astronauts.
On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launches the first ever artificial satellite, Sputnik 1. On November 3rd, 1957, the Soviet Union launches Sputnik 2, the first ever animal in orbit, a dog. On January 31st, 1958, the Americans launched Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite detection of Van Allen belts. On December 18, 1958, the U.S. launches their first communication satellite, Project SCORE. 1959 was a big year for the Soviets. They launched Luna 1, Luna 2, and Luna 3 all in the same year. Luna 1 was an artificial satellite. Luna 2 was a probe to the moon. And Luna 3 took the first photo of the far side of the moon. It was also a very good year for the Americans. On February 17, 1959, NASA launched a weather satellite, Vanguard 2. During June 1959, the U.S. Air Force launched Discoverer 4, a reconnaissance satellite. Then, on August 7, 1959, Explorer 6 took a photo of Earth from space. April 12, 1961, Russian Yuri Gagarin makes first manned Earth orbit. On May 5, 1961, Alan B. Shepard Jr. becomes the first American in space in Freedom 7. February 20th, 1962, Friendship 7 carrying John Glenn becomes the first American to orbit Earth. June 16, 1963, Valentina T. becomes the first woman in space, launched by the Soviets. On July 28, 1964, unmanned Ranger 7 photographs Moon, then hits surface. On March 18, 1965, Alexei L. on Voskhod 2 became the first person to leave the spacecraft in a specialized spacesuit to conduct a 12-minute spacewalk. June 3rd through June 7th, 1965, Gemini 4, Edward White makes first American spacewalk. On March 1st, 1966, Venera 3, launched by the Soviets, lands on Venus. On March 16, 1966, Gemini 8 performs first space docking with a target orbiter. April 3, 1966, unmanned Soviet crafts makes first lunar orbit. June 2, 1966, Surveyor 1, unmanned U.S. craft, is first to land on Moon.
January 27, 1967, a flash fire during training kills astronauts aboard Apollo 1, putting the Moon on hold. October 11 through October 22, 1968, Apollo 7, first manned test of the Moon rocket in Earth orbit. December 21st through December 27, 1968, Apollo 8, first manned orbit of the Moon. July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong becomes the first man to step foot on the Moon.
Now is the time to reach a level of research and development not seen since the height of the space race. We need to make those investments.
This is our Fun Facts segment. Today we'll tell you fun facts
About each Apollo mission.
Here we go. On January 27, 1967, a fire erupted in the Apollo 1 command module during a test on the launch pad, destroying the module and killing astronauts Grissom, White, and Chaffee. It was later used for Apollo 5 mission. Apollo 4, test of the new Saturn V rocket stack and station. Apollo 5, unmanned, first flight of lunar module, successfully fired descent engine and ascent engine.
Apollo 6, unmanned, second flight of Saturn V.
Apollo 7 was the first manned Apollo flight and the first manned flight of Saturn IB.
Apollo 8 was the first manned circumlunar flight of the CSM, 10 orbits in 20 hours, and the first manned flight of the Saturn V rocket.
Apollo 9 conducted the first manned flight test of the lunar module.
Apollo 10 manned, dress rehearsal for the lunar landing.
Apollo 11, lunar module performed the first manned landing on the Moon.
Since 1961, when Sputnik 1 was launched by the Russians, Americans panicked, but managed to pull everyone together and made bigger research with more advanced technology and education, especially math and science. It made us have Post-it notes, Tempur-Pedic mattresses, the Hubble telescope, and the International Space Station. Nothing would be the same without this turning point in human history.
Now step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, ALS, over.
Houston, Columbia on the high gate, over.
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
That's all right, I don't mind a bit.
They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar ticket.
Are you getting a TV picture now, Houston?
Neil, yes, we are getting a TV picture. You're in our field of view now.
I'd like to evaluate the various paces that a person can traveling on the lunar surface. You do have to be